gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies. Look at startups. So welcome guys to this show, and in this show we're going to cover three things. The first one is all around building the aeroplane, right? So this is we've spoken a lot about fundamentals and strategy and all this kind of stuff, and this show is really around applying the actual practical steps, the how-to stuff that you guys can apply in your businesses right now, okay? So we're going to look at how do you design a scale-ready business. So Vinny's built two of these things, doing some amazing stuff. Marnus, of course, very well known in the entrepreneurship circles, and now a best-selling author. Congrats. 90 Rules for Entrepreneurs, which you'll be signing at the end of tonight. And so we're also going to be looking at some of the common pitfalls that any entrepreneur is going to face as they scale. And we're going to run through some scenarios from different business sizes. So whether you're a 1 to 5 man business or 150 man business, and what does that all look like? We're going to look at being built for winter. What does a scale business look like when we enter market depressions, for instance? How do you make hiring and firing decisions? What do you do as a business owner in that context? And then finally, we're going to look at the scale blueprint. And this is really around systems and automation, and how can you effectively exit the business so that the business runs on its own. So that's basically the three things. Vinny is with us for 60 minutes. So what I'm going to do, we're going to go through as much as we can, but then I'm going to have a dedicated question and answer session with Vinny before he drops off. So that'll be at about 9:45 his time or 7:15 our time. Okay, cool. So with that being said, let's get some guests on. So I'd like to welcome Vinny Lingham to the show. Put your hands together. It's a special song for you, Vinny.
Thanks, man.
Okay, cool. And then Marnus Broodryk, CEO of Transaction Capital SME Services. Then next up we have Jason Goldberg. And last but not least, we have Vuyo Tofile, the CEO of Entrepreneur Bank. If anyone wants a couch, it's now freely available because all of the boys have stood up and actually come up here. So it's perfectly comfortable and it is safe right up front. Don't worry, you won't pick on you very much. Alrighty, cool. So let's get on with the first segment, right? Building the aeroplane. So I'd like to... does everybody know who everybody is here on the panel? First of all, hands up. How many say yes? Okay. Let's do this. Marnus, just the headline. Who are you and what makes you awesome in the context of scale?
So I'm Marnus Broodryk. I just released a book called 90 Rules for Entrepreneurs. I was a shark on Shark Tank South Africa, and I'm the CEO of Transaction Capital, SME Services. Transaction Capital is a listed company, and they recently acquired my company, so I'm running a division.
Fantastic. Jason, what's your headline there, dude?
Jason Goldberg, co-founder of Edge Growth, the Vermela Fund, and now the 10X Entrepreneur, that stuff at the back. And we're obsessed with helping guys like you scale your business. So that's what we do.
Okay, cool. Vuyo?
Vuyo Tofile here.
CEO of Intbank. We've got a platform called My SME Tools, and we've scaled it to 9 countries currently in Africa. And I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Cool, amazing stuff. And last but not least, Vinny Lingham, what's your headline, mate? Hang on, wait. I'm not hearing you. Hold on.
Cool. It's better?
Oh, there you go. You're on mute. Okay.
Hey, guys. So I did Shark Tank with Marnus. Before that, I did Dragon's Den as well in South Africa. I've got a number of businesses that I've done over the years. Recently, Gift, which I sold to First Data. It's a gift card processing platform. And now I'm doing CIVIC, which is a identity verification platform using blockchain technologies. And happy to waffle on for ages, but let's get down to it.
Cool. I'd like to stick with you, Vinny. So between you and Marnus, obviously, if you got, how many of you have watched the series The Shark Tank? Okay, cool. So you all know. So see, look how famous you guys are already, yeah? So I want to basically talk around building the aeroplane. And I'd like to tackle it from Vinny, if you could oblige us first. When you are on the Shark Tank series, how do you approach, backing a jockey or a business that's scale ready? And I don't want you to answer it like as a VC. I want you to share some personal anecdotes around Gift specifically, because that was the first really big business comparatively. I mean, you exited that for $50 million. So what did you learn through that process? And what anecdotes can you share from either the Shark Tank or observations just to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I think the one thing I always tell people is when it comes to businesses that, the trend is your friend. So I always look for entrepreneurs building on a trend line. If you come to me and tell me that you're going to be doing, printer cartridges, it's not that interesting because that's not a very, very big trend right now. May have been, 20 years ago, but selling that doesn't make sense. So I always look at like what's hot, what's new. When we did Gift, it was definitely, mobile payments, mobile gift cards, mobile banking. That was a strong trend. And so I look for secular trends that I can exploit in the market. And often you want to spot these trends before everyone else does. But, for startup companies going into established markets, unless you're doing something very disruptive, it doesn't make sense. With CIVIC, we did do that. We actually, we kind of. So we went into the identity space, but digital identity is very different from regular identity. So if you think about driver's licenses and passports, that's a very big, well-established space. But now we're disrupting it by creating digital equivalency. So I think it's more about following what the future trends are going to be when you're building a business and trying to sort of, latch onto that stream of consciousness and thought around the evolution of a market, as opposed to trying to, just competing, doing what everyone else is doing.
Gotcha. I mean, does this point of market cycles and being aware of whether you're in an upturn market cycle, whether one that's potentially flat or, in the case of crypto at the moment, a bear market? Marnus, what is your view on that? Does that change? I mean, if you cast your mind back to when you were a 5-person business versus, say, the business that you are now, which is how many people employed?
Yeah, within our current business, we've got about 40. But in the bigger group, we've obviously got more. So
do market cycles have less or more of an impact in your view when you're a small business or whether you're a big business like, let's just say, 150 staff? Is it the same relevance, in other words?
Yeah, so Vinny is in the tech and it's fast growing and it's the place to be. But there are thousands of entrepreneurs starting a small business, and that's the market that I represent, is the guy who just don't want to earn an income and is maybe going to sell his business and have a good life for the rest of his life, but he's not going to be a billionaire and buy a yacht and open up a bank account in Switzerland. But just do a business, and I think those businesses you can pretty much start in any environment, and some of them are going to be harder to grow bigger. But yeah, it depends what it is. Obviously, when you go for something new like tech, you need to be in the right thing. But I think the majority of businesses you can start in an up and down time, and it's going to depend on the entrepreneur.
Jason, you do a lot of strategic consulting. There's massive banners. Thank God I brought my own branding, because otherwise you would have taken over. but 10x specializes literally in scaling businesses. I mean, what do you see out there when it comes to market cycles and, from a scenario planning perspective, whether you're a bigger business or a smaller business, is it still relevant? What have you observed?
So, whether the wind's blowing at 0 or at 100 k's an hour doesn't really affect a rocket ship. So a rocket ship is a rocket ship, and a really scalable company, it's the right thing at the right time, driven by a great team. Up or down market, not going to make a really big difference. When you get to 500, 1,000, 5,000 employees, you're starting to be a really scaled entity. Market cycles, they'll come into play. But if the trend is your friend, normally you're just growing a little bit less fast. So a really great scale up is not going to be affected by market until the market matures, and really you're affected by cycles in the same way normal markets are.
So if we had just some context, how many businesses do you currently have on your books?
Okay, so we've got 46,000 SMEs on our books. And it's quite interesting. I mean, for us, when I built this business, it was about fulfilling a need, right? So I was a business entrepreneur, still am. And for me, yes, cycles are important, but are you building a business of value? Bottom line. That's what we found. If 10 people need my product, then probably another 100, and then another 1,000, etc. But am I fulfilling that core need that is going to remain standard? Whether there's an up market or downward cycle, there has to be consistency. And am I fulfilling that particular need that can cut across any business at any time? So for us, I think that's what has enabled us to scale our business, and also partnerships. Being able to find partners within certain markets, etc. But at the end of the day, are you building a business of value? I would say that bottom line. So in good times, bad times, if your business is valuable, somebody's going to pay you for it or pay for your service or goods.
Mav, can we just get the roaming mic? I want to start just ready to take some questions. What does a scale-ready business look like? This is the practical stuff, right? So this is now, let's just get some basic points landed here, right? So you have a business, you have customers, you have staff. At that point, scale is a relevant discussion for you. If you're in survival mode, probably not so relevant, right? Although it's still good to be exposed to this kind of stuff. So let's start with the small business. You've got 46,000 small businesses on your books. What does a scale-ready business look like for you? At what point do you push the go button?
Yeah, good question. So for us, there's a couple of things. Do you have a existing brand? So I'll tell you I consider our business now, it's in its third iteration, right? We're still a startup. We've been around for about 8-9 years now. Initially, when we started, it was a platform that was licensed out. It was white labeled, right? So the National Empowerment Fund, you wanted funding there, you'd go on nefplanner.co.za, that was us in the background, right? A couple of years later, we started to create our own brand because we realized we actually don't have any control. Nobody knows of us, so how are we going to scale that business? You don't have a critical brand that people can buy into. Then secondly, do you have proprietary technology, something special, something innovative that, or unique to your business where you can build a barrier? There's a barrier to entries or a moat around your business. The other one was, how can this product also be useful to another entrepreneur? So if it's useful to me, it's useful to you. You're going to tell the next person. So is there a viral effect or network effect in terms of that business? And then fourthly, we looked at elements around, is the business valuable, right? I go back to, is it valuable? So you can have all those three things, but if nobody derives any value from your product continuously, you're not going to scale.
Vinny, if I could come to you, let's go back to Gift because I want to explore that story. So when you were five men strong, or five people under your wing, and you started to scale, because Gift wasn't a mobile gift card business originally, was it? And then it was a pivot, right? And I think that pivot led to scale. Am I right in understanding that story? No? Or was it always mobile gifting? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
it was mobile. We were a mobile first company. We started designing mobile apps around gifting. So that's in fact, the business hasn't changed till today. It's still the same thing.
Okay, so how did you approach scaling? When you knew you had product market fits and you wanted to push the go button, what were the steps that you walked through personally?
Yeah, so with regards to scaling, I think the one thing I will say is we focused not on scale initially. We eventually got to huge amounts of scale After we sold the business, we went over $100 million in sales that year. And so what we focused on was customer engagement. If you build a great product that people want to use and they want to buy, they'll keep coming back. But if you have lots of customers walking in the door and they walk out without making a purchase, it's a problem. So from day one, the key thing we focused on was driving high levels of user engagement.
Okay, was that it? Was there anything else part of that story? It was just user engagement. Let's wrap that up.
No, literally, it's if you're building it. Look, it's different in the online world. If you're building a business online and you want to have people, you want to scale it, it's pointless trying to send like 1 million users to the website. Makes no sense at all, right? If the conversion rates aren't high enough and they're not able to make purchases and transact, you're just losing. It's just like foot traffic walking out of your store. So in the beginning, we focused on how many, what's the conversion rate of clicks to customers basically for the app and for the site, and what percent of those are return customers, and how many of those people keep buying more and more and more, etc. And so we focus on all the little things, like whenever it was a customer service. So one of the things we did really well was customer service, and everyone says that, but no one really thinks about it. We try to make sure we answer as few tickets as possible by building all the tools so people could do it all themselves. So we took the kind of the Amazon model where everything was just very much self-service the whole time. And then when we eventually scaled the business, we didn't have to hire more customer service people. It just scaled beautifully.
So what Amazon's famous for is that they've been very much in the pursuits of vision and growth and not profit. And I think that's disrupted the whole value economy in many instances. And it's a model that a lot of other big brands are trying to adopt. What would you say about, pursuing vision and growth up front and remaining less profitable up front in the pursuit of getting more users, getting more conversions or more traffic? Is it a philosophy?
It depends, right? If you're a bootstrap company, it's just really hard to do that because you need to pay the bills. If you've got venture capital financing, there's other things you can do to get there. So it depends. A lot of these questions depend on context. As a company, what stage are you in? Have you raised money? Have you not raised money? Bootstrap companies tend to have to just drive revenue early on to keep things going, keep the lights on. And venture capital finance companies or even angel investment companies, they can focus a little bit more on keeping what I recommend is on an angel sort of seed financing type company, keep a small team, 4 or 5 people, and have enough salaries there for a year and a half or so. And you just focus on not scaling in terms of getting more customers in, but building the best product and making sure that you can service those customers at very low incremental cost.
Cool. Vinny, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to add to that. I know we're talking about scaling, but a lot of people actually don't focus on the product, getting a great product out there. We come to these engagements, we talk about scale, and everybody wants a billion-dollar business, the Facebook. But even Mark Zuckerberg didn't start off trying to cater for 1 billion people, right? So the key thing most of us lose sight of is create a business for your first 100 or 1,000 people. Make sure that those people are catered for very, very well, extremely well. Focus on those people. Scale will come as a natural progress of that. A lot of us are trying to build these big behemoths, but if you're not focusing on your first customers, you're not gonna find those 500 million customers all over the world. When we built our business, I wasn't looking at other markets. All I looked at was South Africa. That's all. I was trying to focus and deal with a particular issue around South Africa and entrepreneurs who needed a business administration platform to help the business. Simple. How we scaled as a consequence of other things that we'll talk about.
Yeah, Marnus, just going to you. What was your kind of approach or strategy around, scale? Was it focusing on getting everything perfect for those 100, or was it potentially a different strategy?
Yeah, for us and my last business that I sold now and we essentially grew it in 2 years from me going full time into the business to selling. And for us, I said, I don't want to be the biggest company. I don't want to brag about revenue, but we want to be the most profitable company. So from the very beginning, we looked at pricing and product and the customers and said, if we can sign up 10 customers and we can be insanely profitable, then we can sign up 1,000 customers and we can be really profitable. Because I think one of the problems with many businesses is the model is flawed. The product is great. You get all the users and then you sit 2 years down the line and you say, VC funding is up. How do we monetize this?
So I suppose it's this whole concept around having 1,000 true fans, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure, but you must also be able to add that 1,001 fan at a reasonable cost. It doesn't help if that 1,001 fan is also coming at a huge cost. You need to have that foundation solid so that you can just add numbers to it.
Yeah, and I suppose that's a big thing that a lot of entrepreneurs don't get right? Which is, well, it's all great to scale. We might have product market fit. We might be CIVIC, right? Which is scaled massively.
We're still subscale as far as we're concerned.
Really?
We're very much subscale.
Can you contextualize that or quantify that for us a bit? So where are you now? So you've raised you've raised how many million?
Sorry.
That's the delay.
So just finish what you're saying?
The question was, how much have you raised to date, and how much do you plan on raising? At what point do you then qualify your business as being a scale business?
So we've raised like $40 million in total, roughly. And we're still subscale in the sense that when we look at user traction and numbers, we don't have anywhere close to a minimum number of users that we think gives us a level of scale which is enough for us to go turn on marketing. So you won't see any CIVIC marketing anywhere. We don't think we're at subscale. When you start seeing us marketing the product, then you know we've hit a level of scale which allows us to really accelerate growth. And that's, for me, that's the sort of the key indicator. When you can sort of throw fuel on the fire and get an accelerant return on investment because you can scale and grow your product very quickly. That's when you're already at scale. Marketing is a activity which is really reserved for businesses at scale or trying to scale up. It's not for subscale businesses. I think entrepreneurs make the mistake of trying to be successful too quickly, and then they want to basically build the product's not ready, people are unhappy, the processes aren't very well, the support, people want lots of handholding and customer support, it's not intuitive. And so they're in such a hurry, they want to keep hiring people and building the teams bigger, etc. But they don't have a scalable, repeatable, sustaining business model or product offering that actually makes sense.
Jason,
so they want to market themselves too soon as well.
Okay, I mean, when does marketing come into play in your world?
So I think it's just as Vinny said. Just as Vinny said, I mean, when the market is coming to you, actually, it's ironic. When the market is coming to you, you're ready for marketing. So when you've nailed your product and then you scale a little bit and you know that the way you do things today, you can do it more or less the same way when you're 1,000 times the size. That's when you've got a repeatable business model that's scalable. And unfortunately, what that does not look like is we have to hire incredibly smart, rare unicorns to come and do the job. Because the job is so hard to do. That's how we scale. That's the opposite end of the spectrum of a scalable business. So what you want is that mediocre people can do an extraordinary job through the way you've set up the business. And that's then a scalable business. And once you've proven that over and over and over, with your first 100 customers, or maybe it's 5 if you B2B, then you're ready to pour fuel on the fire, put money into marketing. But, by then the marketing's coming to you and you're just accelerating.
So I suppose basically what you're saying is be Tesla, right? So Tesla, doesn't advertise at all. And there's an interesting stats. Over the last 6 years, they've had a greater share of voice than any of the major car manufacturers in the US who spend like billions a year on Super Bowl ads and various other things, simply because of the brand, one, and two, it's about the content that they produce. Do you know what I mean? And especially with technology-enabled products, like content's a very important thing because you have to educate your market around CIVIC. How do distributed ledgers work? How does the token strategy work and all that kind of stuff? I mean, Vinny, how have you used content sales/advertising in your marketing, if at all?
We don't. I mean, right now we don't do any marketing. We launched the beer machine where you could get a beer, and we do like cool PR stuff, but we don't pay for marketing. We don't pay for advertising. We don't do any of that stuff. The product's kind of going viral because everyone knows about it and starts using it. But, for us, there are other issues we have to deal with. We have to deal with like lack of touch points, for example. How many beer machines can use this at? How many websites can you have CIVIC adopted, etc. So for us, it's all about activations and customer engagement and user engagement and sort of smoothing that process out before we even look past that.
Cool. So let's go back to the white paper. So you wrote the white paper for CIVIC, and then you didn't do any marketing, any advertising. So how did you raise $33 million?
It was a very interesting story. We had over $100 million in demand for the product, for what we were selling. So we capped it at 33 million. So what really happened was people read the white paper. The timing was good. We didn't discount the tokens to anybody. It was a very fair. Like, we pioneered running a fair ICO a year ago. No one had done one of those before. It was all like held by a few insiders, and everyone got discounts, and it's kind of a boys club type of scenario. And we just did ours differently, and so everybody wanted to get in, and the price never dropped below the opening price. It's still trading 3x up in 12 months in USD terms. And so we built demand because people understand what we're trying to do, and I think we've set expectations that it's a long-term project and business we're working on, and it's worked well for us.
So in crypto circles, you regard it as the Bitcoin oracle, because you somehow get the price speculation thing right to a less or larger extent. I mean, how important was your personal brand in the context of at least getting to where you got CIVIC to? And what advice would you want to share with our room tonight about personal branding in the context of scale?
Yeah, I think the personal brand stuff was definitely helpful. The Bitcoin Oracle thing was like, I mean, for up until 2017, I think I was pretty accurate with my calls. I think 2017 was a bit of a crazy year. I don't think anyone would have predicted 20,000 end of the year. But at 20,000, I was saying, guys, this is a bit ridiculous, So like at some point we have to, the bar has to break, and I did actually predict there'd be a bubble at the end of the year. But anyway, that's just kind of a humorous. Just because I've been in Bitcoin for a long time, so I think it's more functional. Like, there weren't that many people in it, so anyone could become an oracle back then. Now it's got 20, 30 million people. It's hard to compete. But I think personal branding is kind of overstated in the short term and understated in the long term. So it's important that you have a long-term career building your brand. But I think at any point in time, if you're relying on your brand to do something in the short term, especially early on in your career, it's not going to make much of a difference.
Okay, cool.
Even now, even with my so-called brand, I'm able to get lots of people to sort of get excited about what I'm doing and buy tokens or whatever else. But it doesn't really speed up the rest of the business process. You still have to go through the process of doing everything else, the way you would normally. So like closing deals are, maybe you get in the door faster, but then getting the deal signed and done, it's still like 3 months and lawyers and all that. Like, brand doesn't help there.
Cool. I want to talk around product services. So one of the things when I had a chat to Marnus and Eric Krugers on our show next week was you can't scale a crap service, basically. And so I want to go there for a second just to give some more context. Marnus, what did you mean by that? I mean, let's just say, take Vinny's example where he wanted more users on his site, for instance. And okay, you can do iterative sort of development and improve the interface to make that experience better. But in many instances, a lot of the people in the room here potentially won't have tech businesses, right? So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs around scale when they're not quite sure whether their product or service is actually scale ready?
Yeah, I don't think it's always about you've got a crap service. You might have an amazing service, but you just can't scale it because your business is just not scalable. You're a hairstylist and you like to do everything yourself. And then regardless of how great your marketing is, the property that you set up, you're just not going to scale that business. You're going to depend on people doing it for you. So you need to change the business model and maybe become a franchise, but you're not going to scale that product. So it's very important when you talk about scale to look at the business or product. Never mind this crap service that will never scale, but just the product in general. And I think many times we get so bogged up with the IT world because IT is great and tech is great. You build the app once and you can get 1 million users on it, but you can't get a service out once and get 1 million users on it. So you need to see it in context.
How do you qualify scale-ready products or services in your world, Jason?
So, to be honest, the product or service is less the issue than the business model by which you deliver it. So you've got to get a whole bunch of things lined up so that it's easy to deliver value to the client, and extraordinary value, actually. I mean, if your product is crap, you scale crap, you just get a big pile of crap. But if your product is good and you decide to scale that, then you're choosing to walk on glass, because scaling good makes your life extraordinarily difficult. You need to be scaling great. And then scaling great means you've got an operation to repeatedly deliver great, even at scale, and it's hard to keep on top of everything at scale. And that means you're relying on processes and systems to deliver great repeatedly. And so, entrepreneurs who tend to build highly scalable business tend to do it because they're intending to from the beginning. From the outset, they are removing themselves from things like sales and so on, so they can spend time engineering a business, working on scalability of processes and systems, and they're hiring different kinds of people. They're hiring the kinds of people that could do things at 5 and then 10 and then 100 times our current scale. And I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but the point is that scaling is about a whole bunch more than the product and service. And if you want to rule for product or service, just think extraordinary value. It's got to be a lot better than the other alternatives that are out there, unless we're talking about a new wave and you just first and you just do really good but very first. But for most of us, we're not doing something that we're first at, and then it needs to be really extraordinary.
Vinny, if I can come to you, because I think this point around designing with the end in mind is really important, something we haven't actually discussed before. Vinny, how have you designed CIVIC with the end in mind straight off the bat?
Yeah. Actually, I wrote a blog post about that about a year ago, but 2 years ago.
Yeah, so I read that last night. That's why I just said that.
Content lives forever.
I take a long-term view on things. I'm like, okay, well, what can we do in 7 or 10 years? Like, it's kind of like if you want to achieve something great in your life, you got to have a higher purpose or calling. And so you can start off in baby steps and figure out how do we get there. I think it's a very good process to go through. Primarily because if you're going through that process, you're thinking about things the right way, and you don't like I said. A lot of entrepreneurs are just too impatient. They want to run before they can walk, and they're still not even crawling yet. And so you've got to you got to understand what are the key things you need to do to build up towards a longer term vision. And then if you have that longer term vision, you're a bit more patient. And so when you're patient, you wind up, I think, being more considered and thoughtful about how you piece together your business and how you spend your capital and and I've made these mistakes in the past. I've been too impatient with things, and sometimes it just needs time to, you can't make things happen faster by throwing more money at it. You just got to product, like hiring more engineers and building bigger teams aren't going to make things go faster. In fact, it slows it down. It's the whole mythical man month, they call it. So, having more cooks in the kitchen is not going to speed things up. And so I've gotten used to that. I've gotten used to the idea of being a little bit more patient about things.
Okay, so that $30-odd million that you've raised, how are you going to spend that? I mean, are you prepared to share that kind of information, just broad brushstrokes, so we can get a sense as to...
Honestly, most of it's salaries. I mean, like when you're raising capital in the tech world, 80% salaries, 20% operating costs. It's as simple as that.
Your salary, Vinny?
What is your salary?
I'm proud to say that I'm earning less now than I did in my previous two. In fact, I think I'm earning less now than I did 10 years ago in my pre-company. So, I make sure that I keep my salary in check.
So now that you've designed CIVIC with the end in mind, what's your end salary going to be?
Actually, here's an interesting story. When we started CIVIC, I took $1,000 a year more than my assistant. Because in the US you have to take a salary, otherwise your shares get taxed as income tax. So you have to take a salary. You can't earn nothing, because otherwise the IRS deems your shares to be income. So it was literally $1,000 above my assistant salary, which wasn't a lot.
How much do you earn, Marnus?
No, I'll tell you. No, I'll tell you. No, I also take a relatively low salary, but I don't know what is relative anyway. But my income is coming from just growth and dividends, and I definitely take more than what I can spend.
Amen. Amen to that.
So either I spend too little or I take too much. I'm not sure.
So let's go to where do we go from here? I was really interested in that. So I want to take questions from the audience. Vinny's going to drop off in the next 10 minutes. Who's got a question for either our panel or Vinny? Just hands up. Okay, there you go. This gentleman here. If you can just pass the mic down. Teamwork. Okay, just your name and then the question.
Hi, good evening. It's Suresh and Woodley. Evening to the panelists and to the master of ceremonies. But a question to you as a young tech startup, what would be the path? I know every part would be different, but especially with an app integrating to data with big data, what can you advise? If you're looking for funding at a later stage, but obviously just sort of a broad understanding of the path to take to get to where you want to go to. Do you look for VC? Do you look to bootstrap it, as you said? You've got a solid idea and what you're going to do with it and how you're going to do it. But do you take the pain now and raise the funding and get started, or do you get someone on board that's just going to fund you and give it away?
Sorry, if you say, hi. If you say later stage, can you define, what do you mean by later stage? I like to get that clear.
So bootstrapping it internally, borrowing from friends, banks, family, whatever, get started like that, or from the get-go, go to a VC and say to them, guys, we've got a good idea. Do you want to get on board? And we'll give you whatever it is, and you go from there. Do you try and do it on your own, or do you just take the inverted commas easier way out? And
it depends on your context. I mean, is it a revenue business from day one, or is it a product development cycle? If it's a product development cycle, it's very hard to go and pay for salaries and get people on board early on without capital. It's like you can't bootstrap something you can't sell. I mean, one of the best, in fact, a good example is Sweep South. Jason and I both invested in. I mean, their early investment was like less than R500,000, I think we put in their seed round. And that was because it was a business that didn't need a lot of capital to start generating returns. They built a lot of the technology already. We could start seeing revenues come in. And then as they scaled the business, we plowed more and more capital in because there were some metrics to go on. If their business was something where, you'd spend R500,000 before you see the first dollar, then, or first round of income, it's a very different approach. And you can't bootstrap it. You can't take seed money for that. You need to get much bigger capital. And so it's very contextual.
Okay. All right. Yep. I got you. Thanks.
Marnus, do you want to take a stab at that? Any other questions? Maybe this side of the room? Yeah, that gentleman there at the back. Anish from Giraffe. How's it, bro? How are you?
So can I maybe go in? On Wednesday night, I was doing a startup grind event here, and I always do it at these events where I say, any VAT registered businesses in the house, people put up your hands. And then, so that's at least a revenue of $1 million. And then I go and I ask them if they got any funding. And on Wednesday night, everyone who raised their hands again said no funding, because we always think that we need to get funding to get started. But if you speak to any business owner, or 99% of business owner, they never start with funding. They start somewhere, change the business a little bit, raise money a little bit, change the direction, get customers, and before you know it, you've got a great business. But like Vinny said, obviously context is important, because if you're starting out, no customers, tech business, then you need to raise cash. But I think we focus on it way too much in the entrepreneur world.
Anish, go ahead.
Hey, Vinny, how you doing? This is less of a question about scaling and more of a question about the startup ecosystem or environment in South Africa. So my question is, why did you set up CIVIC in San Francisco, and what would have needed to have been different in South Africa for you to have set up CIVIC in South Africa?
So I get that question a lot. I mean, I think it's very difficult to. I mean, 3 years ago when we started CIVIC, trying to explain to people in America what blockchain was very difficult. I mean, literally VCs in Sand Hill Road didn't understand it. Even up until, let's say, a year and a half ago, or a year ago, it was excruciating trying to explain to them. And these guys are at the cutting edge of technology. Can you imagine trying to explain it to people in South Africa? People kind of thought I was nuts in America, and so I was probably righteously insane in South Africa. Even just Bitcoin. I've been talking about Bitcoin for 4 or 5 years now, and I did talks in Cape Town, South Africa. I've had so much grief from people who told me that it's like drug money and it's for all sorts of bad, nefarious activities, and now the whole world's using it. So, the mindset would need to change in South Africa. I think, doing a really advanced tech in South Africa is very difficult because the mindset's very, it's just not there yet. I think it's very much a revenue-driven culture. So if I say, hey, I need $40 million to go build the tech product, Who in South Africa is going to go and fund that? Let's be honest. Even if I'm running the company, it's not going to happen. So, and by the way, like we always expected that we would need that sort of level of capital to build a business, and maybe even more, right? So you can't raise that sort of money in South Africa. It's just not, the market's not big enough. The knowledge around what advanced tech is like, it's just not there.
Okay, any other questions at the back of the room there? Dan.
Hey, my name's Tyler. I had a simple question. I might be asking you to repeat yourself, Vinny, but I just wanted to understand what are some of the signs a business can look for to indicate that they're ready for scale.
So I think the biggest sign would be high customer retention and good, strong lifetime value of a customer. So that means that if every customer you get in the door, let's say you sell them one thing every 3 months or 6 months, and you know that you're making, a couple of $1,000 a year profit. And you know that you can, and every new customer comes to the door doesn't really increase your support costs or your operational costs. Obviously, it's basic economics, right? If every single sale has a marginal profit for the business and no real increase in fixed costs, and you just have marginal costs that go up with every sale, every customer buying, and every business is different. I get it. But that's a sign of scale, because if you know you can acquire customers at 500 Rand and you're making 2,000 or 3,000 Rand a year off them, that's a business that's at scale. That's easy to fund.
Okay, more questions? No? Okay, cool. I've got a question for CIVIC. You mentioned the word vision and passion earlier on. I mean, what's your why? I mean, I think why is such an important thing to uncover from a motivations perspective. Like, what's your why when it comes to CIVIC? That's definitely a question I always ask all my panelists. So what's your answer to that?
Yeah, I think, why do I do it? I don't know, actually. I mean, I've thought about this. Why am I wired the way I'm wired? I have no idea. I think it's just I have like a bit of a FOMO thing, like fear of missing out on whatever I'm able to do, I guess. I don't know. I've always wondered, put it this way, it's not something which I can explain. Like when I was in school, in primary school in South Africa, and I was a B71, I was like running a sticker business where I'm buying and selling stickers, and I was young, and I was like 9 years old. And it was throughout my high school career, I was always doing something business-wise, something like entrepreneurial. So I never actually understood why I did it. I just did it because it seemed interesting and cool and fun. And then I've got a 8-year-old kid who's exactly the same as me. And without me prompting him or explaining, he started his own little comic business at like the age of 8. And it's amazing. He's got like PowerPoint presentations on Google Docs and like outshining me, obviously, is this. But it's just, some people are just wired for this stuff. And there's no explanation. I mean, maybe there is. It's very deep.
It was amazing, man. Like I'm vibrating, man. I loved it. Look, it's just good to hear from entrepreneurs who scale businesses. Obviously you can't just listen to whatever they say. But wherever they say something that relates to your situation, then you understand and you can maybe gain some knowledge and ideas. And I definitely picked up a few ideas from these guys that are relevant to my own business.